In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at multiple major storms making their way across the nation. We have one wrapping up right now, but we also have more on the way, and I think that severe weather is going to become a much bigger part of our pattern. Let's go ahead and dive into things. And as we take a look at right now, when I'm making this video on Thursday afternoon, March 28th, we have this large coastal storm bringing flooding rainfall up and down the East Coast, but especially for North Carolina, Virginia, and up some of the mid-Atlantic coast. We've picked up nearly 3 inches of rainfall here in Southeast Virginia from this system. We were forecasting about 3 to 5 inches. Definitely has verified and been a very, very massive dumping of rainfall for a lot of these folks that have already seen a ton of rainfall so far this month. Let's go ahead and dive towards tomorrow on Friday, March 29th. And what we see is a much quieter look in the east, especially the southeast here in the northeast, where we were seeing, again, flooding rainfall. Now down to nothing, thankfully, so we're going to be nice and clear afterwards. We also have some nice warm air trying to make its way in, where Easter is going to be very, very lovely, and also the days following for a lot of these areas. In the northwest, we have this kind of regime of strong storms moving through. This has been the theme for a while now. We have snowfall across some of south central Canada into the northern plains. Same story along the Rockies here, even extending down to the Four Corner states. And we have another pocket here over the Sierra Nevada. So yeah, multiple major storms. Let's take this towards Saturday here on the 30th. And what we see is this, again, regime has slid to the south, where we're now seeing a lot of these storms further southward down the west coast. We see California and Nevada being impacted, and then mostly the middle Rockies like Utah, Wyoming, and Colorado, where we're dealing with snowfall for those mountainous areas as well. We do have a 1,004 millibar low pressure center over northern Ohio, bringing rainfall to these southern areas, snowfall across the northern portions there of the Great Lakes, but overall a quieter day. It's by the time I reach the Sunday on the 31st, that'll be Easter, where things start to get interesting. We have very, very warm temps moving in for a lot of the south here across the central and eastern states, even warmer than normal across a lot of these northern areas, just not quite as warm. We do have a major storm starting up for eastern Colorado, 993 millibar low pressure center, a stretching cold front, and a warm front that's trying to develop. Back to the west of it, we have strong snowfall moving in for Nevada, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, down through Arizona and New Mexico as well. It's as we reach that next afternoon where we start to see some thunderstorm implications start up. This is going to be April 1st. We have a 1,001 millibar low pressure center over northern Missouri. Our warm front is located in this area for some of the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes down through the mid-Atlantic. And we have a cold front desperately trying to develop to the south here. It's a very low precipitation one, but this entire corridor in here, I'd be watching for isolated thunderstorm activity. By the time we reach Tuesday, this thing becomes a lot higher precipitation. We also see a secondary low developing, so a 999 over Ohio, which is our original low. And then we have a secondary low now, 1,003 for Arkansas. We can expect potential thunderstorms and severe weather all around this low. So for Texas, Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio there as well, some surrounding states. We have this cold air pouring in behind this system, and that's definitely going to aid in a lot of that instability that we see taking place. And by the time we reach later on for the afternoon of Wednesday, what we see is thunderstorms up and down the southeast coast here for Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and a bit of Virginia. Typically, we look for anywhere south of the low, which is located near Maryland here. So areas south of this would be the most thunderstorm potential. Areas to the north is still, there could be thunderstorms, of course, but mostly showers and snowfall showers for those New England states. Again, I can't preface this enough, but the cold air diving in is very intense and unseasonable. And we see that reach the eastern seaboard. By the time we're taking a look at Thursday afternoon on March 4th, we see snowfall up and down the Appalachian Mountain Range associated with this 977 millibar low pressure center near northern New York. So we see snowfall for Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and then New York and some of northern New England. It's after this point where we begin to really rapidly see the return of that warmer weather. So this is Friday on the 5th, and we have a lot of surging warmth in the central states and a bit of it in the eastern states. And this has been the trend actually over the past couple of weeks, and what I've been seeing on the models for a long time now is these ridges kind of centered over the central states, but still impacting portions of the east. But we have this kind of really stubborn trough over the northeast that is keeping things a little bit cooler near that east coast. Likely, obviously, as we move through April and into May, we will see this become less and less of a factor, where these warm to even hot temperatures will be able to impact areas further and further northward. I also can't really ignore, there's our daily emojis, I can't ignore the storm out west. We have a 985 for Wyoming and Idaho, bringing heavy snowfall to states like Oregon, California, Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. Very widespread there with that heavy snowfall. And what we see happen is that this low dives south of this point down to eastern Colorado, which has been a classic place for these lows to start at a 988. Very strong and very high precipitation cold front underneath, and then this warm front stretching into Canada. So we have this vigorously climbing warm air across these central plains, and we have cold air diving southward as far south as western Texas and Oklahoma. This would set up for a violent severe weather setup, in my opinion, for potentially Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. This is the end of the model run at hours 2:40, but I can only really imagine that this storm would kind of flow into the upper Midwest here, and we would see this severe weather also kind of spread eastward into states like Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, and Louisiana, and potentially continuing on further and further east of even that. Now, the GFS model, we're going to kind of just skip through all the way to around that point, so let's get through these major storms. Again, that major cold air for the 4th there, also present on this GFS model. And then we get that same warm up here. Here's that major storm in eastern Colorado. The difference here is a much weaker low and much less precipitation. I mean, where is that precipitation out for the southern plains? But this storm does move in the direction that I kind of mentioned here. It does move up into that upper Midwest / northern plains corridor as a much less impactful storm. So we see that take place here. Maybe underneath things, we do see a bit of severe weather or thunderstorms underneath right here. Our low is approximately in there. But we don't really have any of that cold air present, as that is all back along the west coast here, not really impacting this storm whatsoever. So that's why we have a less violent setup here on the GFS model. As we keep going, though, it does eventually take off. By the time we're taking a look at Monday on April 8th, we see this low here, 996, a brand new low, developing a cold front here for Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, even impacting Louisiana, Arkansas, and Missouri here. And we have a warm front extending north of that low up into the upper Midwest. So expect surging warmth there, and the cold air trying to make its way down the Rockies and flow underneath all of it. As we keep going, we see this threat kind of moves eastward through the deep south and Ohio Valley, and eventually by Wednesday the 10th into the east coast, where this one gives way to much colder temperatures once again here, as you can see, with potential mixed showers, maybe even snow showers for some of the Great Lakes and upper Midwest, Ohio Valley, and interior eastern states there. Very interesting. Let's move on to the total precipitation on the European model. We see quite a bit for the west coast, but believe it or not, this is actually a little bit reduced from what we've been seeing. Still average to above average for some areas, but definitely coming down on those amounts over time. We do see the northern Rockies here into the northern plains seeing quite a bit. And then this area from the Ohio Valley, even some of the plains, onto the east coast where we're seeing quite a bit. And it's kind of a stretch to include the southeast area. They're seeing a little bit less here, but offshore there's plenty. It's mostly going to be these areas here where we're watching for the most of the activity through the next 10 days. Not expecting many coastal storms or any coastal activity like we've seen, so we are seeing a bit of a shift in the pattern where these lows don't want to track up the coast like we're seeing currently. It's currently raining outside from a coastal low. Definitely appears like those are going to be something of the past, and we're going to see much more inland storms moving towards the coast and pretty much innocently moving offshore or to the north of these areas, but still bringing thunderstorms and potential severe weather underneath, probably just a little bit less rainfall overall. Now, as we take a look at the total snowfall in the European model, no surprise that we see so much snowfall out west. Also, same story for the northern plains. They typically see springtime snowfall still. What is a little bit more surprising is both of these models showing northeast and Great Lakes snowfall, as well as some of the Appalachian Mountains in the mid-Atlantic or even into the southeast here. So with these colder spells, we do still have that potential for snowfall hanging on for a lot of these higher elevation areas. GFS model, as you can see, agrees. It has a bit more in these areas. Definitely, I think that the lesser of the two on the European is more likely. Same story here for the upper Midwest and northern plains. We see a bit more here on the GFS model. A little bit more plausible here because these areas do tend to see early and late season snowfall such as this. However, I still think that this is maybe a little bit overblown. Let's take a look at that temperature pattern. Again, we see this colder air mass move in and then warm up really quickly, but we have that even more violent cool down coming up on the 4th, and here that is. So for the east, these greens on the high temperatures of the 4th of April here are going to be 10 to 15 degrees below normal. So keep that in mind. Whatever your average temperature is, 10 to 15 degrees below that is what is expected right here. Although, again, it does warm up very quickly afterwards. We see this warm up surging. Still hasn't reached the east coast by the 7th, but definitely the plains here, and should start to influence the east coast here sometime after the 7th, likely the 8th and 9th time frame, before we get our next cold front moving through, which is already in the works here by the 7th. Anyway, we upload every single day, so be sure to subscribe for more daily weather videos just like this one. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload, so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.